All right, so welcome back. Today we're going to continue on PHP. Remember that we are on Piazza. If you have any questions or if you want to, you can go ahead and post to the live stream, YouTube live stream. I'm watching both of those. Last time I gave a quick rundown just to get you started for Lab 1, highlighting some of the main differences between, say, C and Java and PHP. Just a little bit of a retread on each one of those. It was created in 1995 by Rasmus Lerdorf, excuse me. And again, it started out as his own little pet project, and so a lot of the warts, a lot of the bad things about the language are because, you know, it was thrown together. It was never intended to be one of the top 5 programming languages when he was throwing together a personal homepage tool set. You'll see a lot of C and HTML influence, including C-style syntax. He didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so the math library, he's just making calls to C libraries on all that stuff. A lot of the same functions that you've used in C, like strcmp, you can use directly in PHP. But it's also influenced a little bit by HTML in that a lot of the weird stuff you'll see, including function names, are case insensitive. Lowercase foo, foo, uppercase f, uppercase o, as a function name, those are all the same. But now, in contrast, say, variable names are case sensitive. So his choices for the things were kind of like weird, and but in any case, it's because it was just a pet project. It's now grown to be one of the top 5 programming languages. Many websites, in fact, maybe even the plurality of websites, are written with PHP backend code, including, you know, Facebook, a lot of CMS, Drupal, that's all written in PHP. It's interpreted, it's not compiled, you just start running it. That way, if there are any syntax errors, like you forgot a semicolon or something like that, it's going to run the first 10 lines or so, and then when it gets to that erroneous 11th line, that's where it dies. All syntax errors are now runtime errors. Although it is a little bit familiar, again, because of that C influence. Semicolons, curly brackets, name identifier rules, etc. And it's also dynamically typed. You don't declare variables, you just start using them. If you assign an integer value to a variable, it's an integer. If you assign a floating point value to a variable, it becomes a double automatically, right? PHP code begins with a Langle, left angle bracket, a question mark, and then PHP, and then ends with a question mark and a wrangle, or right angle bracket. And anything outside of that is ignored and dumped from the interpreter as potential being, you know, static HTML. You can interleave HTML because of that. That's why he wrote it to begin with, so you could use it and embed code in a web page. It'll start at the top. Here I'm going into PHP mode, and I'm printing out hello. I'm going out of PHP mode, and now I'm back into static HTML mode. And here I go back into PHP mode. So that when this is, ultimately when this is rendered to the browser, all you ever see is this static HTML and then whatever PHP produces as output, okay? So let's talk about some more of the basics. We've already seen basic variables, but let's go ahead and retread that. So variables, right? Again, this will all be pushed to GitHub later today, probably maybe tonight or whatever. But as I said before, all variable names must begin with a $sign. Right? And why? Well, that's just because it's easier to write an interpreter if that's a rule. Variable names should be written using lower camel casing, right? Although it really doesn't matter if you want, as long as you're consistent about it, and are case sensitive, right? So lowercase foo, foo is not the same as uppercase f, foo, right? But you should prefer the former there rather than the latter, the upper camel casing. You don't declare variables. You just use them, right? You don't declare a variable's type, right? It changes with whatever value you give it. PHP supports integers, whole numbers. They are 32-bit signed integers, so they're not, there is a maximum value. What is that maximum value, by the way? Foo is equal to 2.147 billion something, right? What specifically is it? It's a 32-bit signed integer, so it's 2 to the 31st minus 1, y to the 31st instead of 32, because you need that 1 bit for a signed bit, and y minus 1 because you start at 0. And that gives you that number right there, which is expressible. Print f %d and the line, foo. Let's run this. PHP, this is a demo, right? Yep, good. So there's that value. If I tried to add something to it, foo, you can do something like this, plus plus. What's it gonna be? Oh, okay. Apparently it is not 30. It is allowing this. It should PHP integer. Maybe I'm lying. Type. We'll just do this. Integers. Oh, 64-bit platforms usually have a maximum. Okay, so apparently this is a 64-bit platform. Is that true? Let's find out. How can we test if it's a 64-bit platform? By going up to 60 or 63. Thank you. I have to do my math correctly. 63 bits. 1 bit still for the sign bit, minus 1 because again you're starting at 0, and I'm not going to get an accuracy that way. Wolfram Alpha. There. That'll give me an accurate number that I can use over here in my IDE, and let's see if it works. There we go. Now you get overflow. By default, so again, as per the documentation, as of PHP 7.0, integer literal, okay, blah, blah, blah. You'd have to read the documentation. RTM, read the manual. It used to be that they were, let's see, octal notation, nope. It depends entirely on your system. So if it's a 32-bit system, then it's going to be 32 bits. If it's a 64-bit system, then it's going to be 64 bits. And apparently, on CS50, it's 64 bits. You can ask what version of PHP you're using, and your mileage will vary. Your mileage may vary, but it will vary with PHP. This is PHP 7. If you are on the CSE server, I think that they're still on PHP 5. Don't quote me on that, though. Different versions will have different things. But in any case, PHP supports integers, floating point numbers, which are 64-bit doubles, IEEE 754 doubles, strings, booleans, arrays, and objects. Right? PHP supports case insensitive and sensitive keywords for true and false. But it's best to use lowercase on both of those. You can use all uppercase false, all uppercase true. It's better if you just use all lowercase. Yeah?
So if we type the PHP code on CS50 and then run it in the CSE server, is that going to be a version problem?
Potentially, yeah. Let's find out.
I just looked, they're on 7.4.21.
Oh, 7.4.21?
Yep.
Okay, that's close enough that probably not.
Okay.
What was my version? Warning, PHP is not recommended. Good job. Anyway, 7329 locally here. Yeah. SSH. Let's go to an older server. They're probably on which PHP version. I'm on CSCE 746. So that's even yeah, that's even up to date on this one. So Emacs temp.php. Let's see if they're 32-bit or 64-bit. Temp. All right, looks like they're 64-bit. Right.
I dealt with the whole PHP is being removed in future Mac OS versions because I'm on Monterey's so they removed it. So I had to install PHP.
Wonderful.
I spent 4 hours doing that.
Yeah, if you do want to get into PHP more, if you really want to, generally what you do is you install a WAMP server or a LAMP server. WAMP is Windows, Apache, it's a web server. M is MySQL, and P would be the PHP thing. That's a stack that you can that comes all bundled together. WAMP stack or a LAMP stack for Linux AMP. Or Mac MAMP. There might be a MAMP, I'm not sure. But in any case, it supports these things. It supports case-insensitive Boolean values. Otherwise, there are no pointers. Right? Many of you are coming from a C background, no pointers at all. There is pass by reference and pass by value. That is supported, and it's a completely opposite syntax of C. So when we get there, you'll recognize it, but you'll think, hey, wait, that's backwards. And yes, you're right, it is backwards. Don't ask me why. Again, Rasmus Lerdorf. Let's call him up and ask why. No memory management. Like Java, unlike C. You can delete variables if you want using unset, but otherwise you don't need to worry about it. There's automatic garbage collection. If an array goes out of scope and is no longer used, then the PHP interpreter will decide when to clean that up. String concatenation. Do you remember what happened yesterday when we started trying to concatenate things with strings? For example, A is equal to 10, or hello, right? And then B is equal to 10. And if we tried to say C is equal to A plus B, there we go, and tried to print it out, what is the result of this going to be? Oops. It's going to it's going to interpret that as addition. Hello, what numerical value does that have? 0. So 0 plus 10 is 10, along with a warning, right? So what if I want to concatenate those two things together? Period. Exactly. Where does that come from? Not C, not PHP, or no, not HTML. It comes from Perl. So it's a kind of a Frankenstein of languages. Yeah, I need a different concatenation operator. Okay, well, period, whatever. And now we're reconnecting. Wonderful. So I'll go ahead and refresh that while it's in the background. Yeah, the string concatenation is going to be with the period. You can string those together. You can use the compound assignment operator, so dot equals. If you have a string, dot equals, and then another string, it'll work like the plus equals. Right? You can define global constants. You can define global constants using the define function. So for example, and let's, yeah, it's been fixed now. So let's go ahead and do it over here. Demo, let's just make sure that this works. It'll be, oops, y is 0. Oh yeah, y is 0, because I concatenated, right? Before it was what? A warning and 10. If I concatenate it though, what's it gonna end up being? 0. Why? Because PHP, I guess, right? What if you really wanted to say hello and then concatenate that with 10? Here's a trick, right? So I'll go with A and then concatenate that with a stringized version of B. Right? By putting that inside double quotes, then that will make it into a string. Oops. Still, oh, duh. No, that's why it wasn't printing. It was printing correctly earlier. What's my placeholder for a string? S. There we go. There. That's better. Right. You can surround this with whatever you want. Right? There you go. And I don't think he's here today, but he pointed out, and I learned something yesterday from a student in here that said that if you use the singles operators instead, it will not evaluate that variable. Instead, it is the literal $B. Right? If you want to, and I did look this up to make sure, and read more documentation on it, like, whoa, why, again, I have a question too. Why the hell did they do it like that? And there's no rhyme or reason. If you want to escape it with double quotes, surround it with curly brackets. Oh no, it is being interpreted. Right? Otherwise, you can escape the $sign, I believe, and then it's not going to be interpreted as, come on. All right. Well, we're waiting on that. We can continue with the define. Well, no, I wanted to do the define over here. Yeah. Well, I can continue editing. Anyway. Yeah, it's not going to save anything, but I can continue to type. But we can continue to type. So define. Where have you seen that before? If there's a hashtag in front of it, looks familiar, right? C. And so he stole that from C. If you want to define pi, then you can do it like this, 3.14159. Any attempts to change it later on, however, are not going to take effect. It might be a warning. It might also be an error. So if I want area is equal to pi times radius, right? Pi r squared, and my radius is 2, say. Right? That'll work. It'll work like that. Why didn't I put a $sign in front of pi? It's not a variable, exactly. It's a constant, right? And so you don't use, and I believe that they are case insensitive, right? So old PHP constants are case insensitive. New PHP, they are case sensitive, as of 8 and above, right? So what were we? We were only 7, right? Okay. So let's try this out. Come on. I'm going to copy and while that's refreshing, I will make sure that you have this in your notes. Reload. Okay, there we go. There. And PHP demo. Hello B. Let's find out what the area is. Print f. Area is equal to %f and the line area. There we go. Is that right? A radius of 2. Well, we can test it better if we just set the radius to a 1 unit circle and it looks good. Right? Don't use your own pi. Use the math library's pi. Right? Other math library is automatically included. So, for example, square root. Right? Y is equal to square root of 2. And printf. Let's print that. Y is equal to square root of 2, 1.415, blah, 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 right? Sine, cosine, arcsine, everything that's in the standard C library is loaded up automatically by PHP. It is notorious at polluting the namespace. So now, they are case insensitive in old school PHP. In new school, 8 and above, they are case sensitive. So let's find out, again, what were we on? I think we were on 7 or something like that. So PHP demo, this should work exactly the same. Oh, it doesn't. All right, so PHP version. That's 7. I'm not sure. Then case sensitive in some version plus. I don't know. But it used to be that they were case insensitive. I'm pretty sure. Attempts to redefine pi, for example, define pi to be 3.0. Right? This is going to result, hopefully, in an error or at the very least a warning. Constant pi is already defined. It's a no op. It's not going to redefine it. Right? So it is truly a constant once it's been defined. Okay. I'll just make sure that you have just this part. There. Okay. We've already talked about type juggling. Right? PHP is dynamically typed, so variable types are not fixed and can change. Right? In general, the plus operator is always a addition. Right? There is a third instance, and I believe that if you use it with an array, It's some sort of union or something like that. Don't do that though. It's weird, and there are better ways of doing that. It's always addition. It parses the string when mixed as best as it can to a numerical value, right? So for example, if I have a string 1, 2, 3, that parses to the integer 1, 2, 3. If I have hello, that parses to 0 because there are no numerical values in that string at all. If you have a partial numerical string 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, hello, that will parse to 1, 2, 3 because it sees the 1, the 2, the 3, says H. Okay, I'm done parsing apparently. So what have I parsed so far? 123. It also works with floating point numbers, so 3.14 parses to 3.14, 14. There we go. And you can also use, I believe that you can use different bases, and you can also use scientific notation. So if you've got 3.14E4, that will parse to, well, what is that in scientific notation? E stands for 10 to the 4th, right? 3.14 times 10 to the 4th is going to be what? I'll move the period over, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And it's going to end up being that value, right? In general, don't rely on type juggling. Just know that it is there and know that wacky things will happen when it happens. Instead, be explicit with your code and conversions. If you want to convert a string over into a number, that's perfectly fine. How would you do that? Just be intentional about it. If you have, say, value or a is equal to 10, 1, 0, there we go. How do you convert that over into an integer? How do you do it in C? A to I, right? But we don't have a to I. I don't know why. Actually, we might. It might be an alias to this, but it's better to use int val of a and y. Let's do another one here. B is equal to 3.14 e to the 4th. Just let's check my work, right? Double val of b. Right? That is weird. Double val. That's all right. You can go val, and guess what? Those are the exact same functions. You can also go int val, right? That's the same function. Don't do that though, right? I'll keep them both as lowercase like this. The syntax highlighter here is recognizing one but not the other. Go figure. Let's go ahead and print these out. Printf %d and %f and the line. That'll be x and y. There. All right. Okay. You also have other functions to test whether or not something is a numerical value. So for example, if is numeric of a, this is either true or false. Printf true end line. Else printf not a number end line. And I'll change this to is a number. There we go. So is a numeric value or not? It is. Why? Because it's 1, 0 and it gets parsed that way. Is 1, 0 hello a numeric value? It's not, because it's not a pure numeric value. What if it's hello? Certainly we can agree that this is going to be false, right? It is not a number, and we're right. Right? Only if it's a pure numeric value like this, or if you go with 10 here, that's definitely a number. Right? There's no dispute in that. Right? Okay. You can also do you have is int a, and that'll be false if it's a double, I believe. Right? Let's do that with b. No, let's do it with y because we know that that's a double. If is int printf y is an integer, and the line, right? Numeric is just a generic term for any numerical value, doubles or integers. Printf y is not an integer. There we go. So which is it? Y is not an integer. Why? Because it's a double. Right? You also have, well, how do you do it with float? We don't have doubles because we don't have floats and doubles. Instead, we just have one floating point number, and it's a IEEE 754 64-bit floating value, blah, blah, blah. 17 digits of accuracy. That's the take home, all right? Is float. So we only have is float. There probably is double. You'll find that for every function in PHP, there are at least 2 or 3 other aliases, and they all just point to the same function. Right? Let's go ahead and run this, and we find out that y is double, float, and float. There we go. And it is indeed a float. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and bring all of this stuff over so that you have it in the notes. PHP. Any questions so far? No? All right. Yeah, go ahead.
So if it's if we don't change it to an integer, we just leave it as a string. It won't be is integer.
Ooh, that's a good question. Let's find out. So is int here. Let's try it with a, which was the string 10. Is that an int? Well, it doesn't look like it to me because it's a string, and it is indeed is not an integer. Right? Even though I put y, yeah, I put y here, but we were testing a. Right? So it's a little bit more specific. I don't know if there's is strict number or something like that, but you can string it together. Is int or is float, and there's your test to see if it's any number at all. And how do we do or? Vertical strokes, Sheffer strokes. How do we do and? 2 ampersands. We'll get to that here momentarily. Otherwise, it does have a null type. It is case insensitive, so it is also null, right? If you want to do C style, all caps. If you want to do Java style, all lowercase. If you want to, you can really go with no, which is alt cap style. Don't do that. It looks ugly, right? Or SpongeBob speak, whatever you want to call it. Otherwise, you can test for null. And the best way of doing that is using is null of a. Right? That returns true if a, there we go, is null or if it has not yet been set. Remember, it's a dynamic programming language. So if you don't have to set a variable to start using it, right? A equals 10. I haven't defined B yet. What happens if I print it out? Print just B here. Let's find out. Undefined variable B, but that is just a notice. It's not even a warning. So what ends up getting printed out? Nothing, exactly. What is the string value of nothing? Nothing. If I surround this with it is equal to, and then concatenate it, see? All right. I'm not even going to put spaces around that so that you see what it looks like. Right, there. It is equal to
C.
nothing, C, right? What if it were added to something? What if I say that C is equal to A plus B? What is the numerical value of nothing? 0. So printf C, I'll just print it out like this. C is equal to, C is equal to 10. Why? 10 plus nothing is 10. Right? I am getting notices here though, but again, that's just a warning. You can suppress warnings, I believe, using, is that it? Yep. Oh, nope, that's something different. PHP suppress all warnings. remove warning messages. Okay, you can do it programmatically here by changing your error reporting. I don't know how you can do it with the from the command line though. But we can go ahead and say, I don't care about any error reporting whatsoever. Don't tell me about anything. Oh, here. There we go. No warnings, no notices, no errors. It's all good.
Perfect. I'm turning it in like this. Can't take points off for errors if the errors don't show up.
Exactly. I'm gonna leave that in there for demonstration purposes, though. All right. But if it's not set, then it ends up as the empty string. There's lots of nothingness. Empty string, 0, etc. False. If you try to use it in a Boolean expression, it ends up becoming false. Yeah.
So on the lab yesterday, we did like we had a get max and get sum functions, and we had to check to make sure it wasn't null. Is there any like difference between doing if is null and then the variable versus like if variable equals null?
Good question. Like, for example, if a is equal to null, then printf, yep, end the line. Or you can do something like, here, we haven't defined b here, so b is null, print yep. So it shouldn't print a, yep, but it should print b, yep. B, yep. Right. So no difference. If you want to use this style of checking null versus is null, that I had over here in the notes, is null, then no. Except that there is one difference. What if you set b explicitly to be null? Now it has been set, but it has been set to null. That doesn't matter much when you're checking for null, because either way it's going to say, yeah, it's null. Oh, it hasn't been set, so therefore if you try to use it, it'll be null. But there is another check that you can check, is set. Is set a returns true only if the variable has not been set or ever used before, right, in the scope. Now, if you have set it to equal to null, then is set will return true. Yeah, you set it. You use the value, you set it explicitly to null. Right? Note here, is null has underscore casing. What else has underscore casing? Where were we? Is int, is float, is numeric. What doesn't have underscore casing? That is not a typo on my part. That is what it does. Again.
Not gonna lie, I've got an IDE up, and right when you type that, I typed is, and then it asks like, and I'm like, what?
Yep. So, consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds, or whatever the quote is. Right? Operators. We've got arithmetic operators, the standard ones. Concatenate. We've already talked about concatenation. You've got increment operators, plus, plus, minus, minus. You've got the logical operators and the comparison operators. And unfortunately, in my opinion, you can use these operators all with strings. It'll end up being lexicographically. Right? And there is full native UTF support or Unicode support for in PHP. So you can ask whether or not your smiling emoji is less than or equal to your poop emoji. Let's go back over here and get rid of all of this. So A is equal to, there we go, B is equal to poop emoji. It's entirely appropriate to use this because some other tools that I've used use this and for an uninitialized variable, right? That Python tutor or whatever. A is less, else. B is less. I don't know which one of those comes first. All right, B is less. And there you go. Why? Because there's this big table of all these symbols, and there's an order to this table. The poop emoji comes before the smiley emoji, just like everything is lexicographic order. If I don't do something jokey like this, which one of those comes first? or apple. Apple. Apple is less uppercase. Why? Because the uppercases come before the lower cases. And so if I do something like banana, which one, or sorry, uppercase B, banana, apple, which one of those is less? Banana, even though it's out of order. But it's out of alphabetic order, but it's in lexicographic order. Right? And then, I don't know, oops, nope. I don't have, the poop emoji, all the emojis, those are all way up in the Unicode scale, so banana is going to be less than that, definitely. Right? Because this is up there in the millions or something, whatever the, what value would that be? There's some number in there. Also convey a sense of whimsy or silliness, given its fun, happy expression. There we go. There's the hex code, hex to decimal. So its actual value is 128,169. It's way up there. The ASCII text values are only 0 through 127, extended 0 through 255. Right? So you can do that, but you shouldn't. Instead, you may instead want to use strcmp and or str case cmp. What is the general purpose of those? They return something negative, positive, or 0, depending on the relative ordering of those things. Still in lexicographic, so you still have the problem of uppercase B, banana, coming before lowercase a, apple, but that's how it works. Okay. Where do those come from? Those come from C. Right? You can use strict comparison to ensure variables have the same type and value. So the two strict comparisons are going to be equals, 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 and not equals, equals. Right? Just as we demonstrated yesterday. You can also experience some bad math. Right? I don't need to highlight that anymore. There we go. All right. So what happens when you go and divide by 0? Well, what happens if you do this in calc and you take a limit? As your denominator gets smaller and smaller and smaller, it goes to infinity, and it does here too, inf. See right there? Right. What happens when you do something like a is equal to square root of -1? What happens in mathematics when you take the square root of -1? You get nan, because it is not a number. It's an imaginary number technically, right? Right. So you can check for these things. Right. If is nan, and now we're back to underscore casing here. Nan, excuse me. Then printf, not a number. Otherwise, you can check if is infinite. This will be true if it's positive or negative, right? So, infinite. And I should get not a number right here. If I transpose these, I will get that it is infinite. Right? So checkers for those as well. Let's see, 39, all right. Any questions online? Nope, just spam, looks like. So welcome, YouTube bots. There we go. All right, so strings in PHP. Strings are mutable, just like they are in C. You can change them. Unlike Java, Java strings are immutable. You cannot change the value of strings once you've created. Changing the value in Java means that you are creating a brand new string. If you concatenate two strings together, that creates a third string that then you need to capture into a variable. But in Java, or in C and in PHP, all strings are mutable, and that you can treat them like character arrays. So for example, if I say message is equal to hello world, oops, I meant to make that into a capital letter. So let's print that out and see that MSG is indeed lowercase h. If you want to, you can change that to MSG sub 0 is equal to an uppercase h, and then print it out. And you can see that it's been changed. Right? It is no different than this. Right? Same thing, because double quotes, there are no single characters in PHP, there are only strings. So if you do something like this, hello, hiya, instead, you're rolling the dice here, right? Okay, it's still H. Oh well. It's only going to take that first one, right? And it's going to end up ignoring everything else. No warning, no error. Okay. Remember, I'm not suppressing them anymore. So it's perfectly fine and happy with doing something like this. If you want to splice something in, you can do that as well, but just use string concatenation then. Right? All right, so move this back. For this reason, I do like the convention of using single quotes for single characters, just because it looks familiar, but internally know that it's nonsense. Right? So strings are mutable. You can treat them like character arrays, right? But no null terminating character, right? No memory allocation. So like C, if you wanted to create a new string, you'd have to allocate enough memory to hold it. You'd have to do it properly. Then you'd have to properly null terminate it. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff here, right? Many C string functions, such as, say, strlen or strcat, like we did before, etc., can be used. Again, there are no null terminating characters, so strlen of hello world would return 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 because of that end line character. So if I print print strlen of MSG, that should print out what? What did I say? How many were there? 13, okay. All right. There are lots of other string functions that you can use. I'm only going to show you one nice one called explode. So it's got a delimiter, a string, and then a potential limit. So if you want to explode your string, for example, you have CSV data, and you want to tokenize it. If it was in C, you'd use strtoke for string tokenization. If you were in Java, you would use split. You're going to split that string up into multiple places. There is a split, but it is not recommended to use. Instead, there's another one called preg split, which is Perl compatible regular expression split. We'll talk about that here momentarily. But otherwise, if you just need to explode a string, blow it up, just use explode. So for example, let me give you some data here, CSV data. Right. Hello, world, Chris, computer. Right? 1, 2, 3. Right? There's some CSV data. I want to explode that data, CSV data. Right? Actually, that's not the order. What is it? First, the delimiter. So obviously, if it's CSV data, my delimiter is commas, CSV data, and then I'll leave it like that. It returns an array of strings. Tokens is equal to. Here's a preview of some arrays that we'll get into. Print R, tokens. R is going to be readable, so it's going to print it out in a nice readable format here. Hello, world, Chris, computer, 1, 2, 3. The delimiter is gone, and it's been split up into those 5 tokens, right? If you want a different delimiter, say, oh, that's perfectly fine too. How will that split it up? Oh, blah, 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 right? If you want multiple delimiters, that's fine too. Right? Oh, it didn't do it. Oh, no, it did do it. What did it do? There's the only delimiter that's an O and a comma. So it's not individual characters. It is this string here is my delimiter. Oh, I see that there's the delimiter, so I split it into hell and then the rest of this stuff. Right? So there you go. If you want multiple delimiters or you want more sophisticated splits, you have to use a more sophisticated tool. And one of those sophisticated tools is preg split. So let me demonstrate that. Preg split, right? Here we give the pattern, the string, and then the limit. I'll get into the limit later on, but here I want a pattern. This can be any regular expression pattern. So let me go ahead and repeat what we just did, but instead of string, let's have this and tokens is equal to that, and we'll print this out here. I'll go ahead and get rid of that so that we don't have too much stuff printing out here. Oh, nope. It should be like that. No, nope. What is it going to be? Damn it. I think it's going to be something like this. Nope. Oh, wait. Function name must be a string. I was getting it right. Function name must be a string. What did I do by putting a $sign in front of that? Made it into a variable, right? So I couldn't find what, I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. Right, there we go. Preg split, no line, no ending delimiter. Okay, fine. I have to do something like this, maybe? Pro compatible regular expressions. I should have looked at that, looked it up off the, instead of relying off the top of my head. So you can put general regular expressions within this thing. So for example, if I want, commas, then I can do something like this. Again, if you're going to just do commas, then just go ahead and use this. It's a much more constrained tool, easier to use. You don't have to write the full regular expression here. But if you want to say any O, M, or P, or no, O, R, or E. All right, there we go. I think that'll work. Yeah, there we go. That splits on any O, or any R, or any E, not the ORE, like that you would get with the explode up here. There's no commas here. If you want to split on any numbers, 0 through 9, right? Let me go ahead and put some numbers in here. Right? See what happened there? H, and then it split on that 2, gave me an empty token, split on that 3, gave me an empty token, split on that 2, and then continued with HELLO until it got to the next 3, empty token, then the rest of the token, and then finally empty token, and then nothing at the end, right? I think. And then empty token at the end. Right? If you wanted, say, that's not what I wanted. What I meant is I want any sequence of 3 numbers. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Any 0 through 9. Now it will treat that entire block of 3 numbers as a token. Well, no, not beginning with 3 though, right? So anything that is, say, well, not beginning with 1, say. So any 2 through 9 or 2, and then the second number can be anything from 0 to 9, and then the third one can be any number from 0 to, let's see, what do I want? Let's go 9, and let's limit the other end here to 4. Right? So the first token has to start with a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. That means this one, but not this one. The second one can be anything 0 to 9. So now we're down again. We're just down to these 2 here. But the last one has to be a 0 through 4. So that's this one. Right? This will end up being the only token that matches. Right? Let's test it. Yep. Those other 2 tokens are ignored because they do not conform to this. You can do other sophisticated stuff like any white space, 1 or more occurrences of it. So, or any white spaces, 0 or more occurrences of it. Right? I'm going to go ahead and go with 1 or more occurrences. Well, is there any white space in that string to split on? Nope. So it's only 1 token. But if I put in space, space, tab, end line, right, then all of those become tokens. Yeah?
So if you've done 0 through 9, then put the plus, but then it just got rid of the numbers without all the empty tokens.
0 through 9, 9, excuse me, plus is one or more occurrences, yes. Yep. But if, what I did was 1, 2, 3, exactly 3 numbers, right? Now, if there were 4 numbers, it would still match those first 3. It just would ignore that 4th one. If there were 2 numbers followed by A and A, then it would not match that. So lots of cool things that you can do with regular expressions. I use this all the time. If I get unformatted data, for example, I pulled prerequisites. So I pulled data for all my courses from like 3 or 4 different sources. Canvas, MyRed, we have a prerequisite system that reports the grades on the prereqs for this course. That last one is actually just a web page. So to pull everybody's, so it displays NUID, it actually doesn't display NUID, it displays it as metadata embedded within the HTML. So the unsophisticated user will sit there and say, oh, okay, I'm going to have to do a whole bunch of manual work for 150 students to match up NUIDs. The sophisticated user will realize, no, I could do this with a regular expression. Match anything that looks like an NUID, give me the name, and produce new data. And I'm done. Now I can cut and paste it into Excel, and I'm done. Right? Once you learn how to... Actually, I'm not even very good at regular expressions. Anytime I need to do a regular expression that's complicated, I have to look it up, and there are plenty of tools online to help you. But knowing that you can do stuff like that is a really powerful tool, knowing how and where to go to build a regular expression so that you're not spending hours upon hours massaging the data to get it into another format. It'll save you a lot of time. Again, you don't have to know this crap off the top of your head. I don't. Anytime that I need it, I just look it up. Right? But regular expressions, definitely start know of them as a tool and use them when you can. Right? And this is, the reg here is for regular expression, a Perl compatible regular expression. It's basically a programming language in and of itself, but there are several variants of it. There's Perl compatible regular expressions. There's general regular expressions, there's GNU regular expressions, etc. So there are different variants and different dialects of that kind of language. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I should have done that multiple times, right? That's 0. Let's note these. This is 1 or more occurrences of a digit. Right? What else did we do? The white space one might be useful. I think it's S, right? Yeah, S plus. 1 or more occurrences of white space. Right. You can go with 0 or more occurrences of a number by using the star. It's called the clean star, K-L-E-E-N-E, like Kleenex, but not exactly. What else did we do? Oh, and then regular old comma. Would be a regular old comma. What else? I think we did, oh, here. A-E-I-O-U, there we go. Any single occurrence of a vowel. There we go. E-I-O-U. We know those are vowels, right? All right. You're in computer science, so you can forget a lot of your English, but you can't forget all your English. Hopefully that's not something you'd ever forget. All right. Substring is a very useful one. String, start index, and optionally, the length. So on several of these now, I've put another parameter in square brackets. What does that mean? It means that it's optional. You can give it or you cannot give it. If you don't give it, then some default value takes over. What that default value is, you'll have to read the documentation, RTM, read the manual. But what this does is it produces a new substring starting at the index, at the start index, to the end or of length. Right? So one thing that you might have done last semester is protein trigrams, right? Super easy with this, right? I want a substring of this DNA sequence or RNA sequence starting at this index of length 3. Go over 3. I want the next one of 3. Go over 3. The next one of 3. Right? Dot. You also have string replace, str replace. Right? Here you've got a needle. Right? You are looking for the needle in the haystack. You're going to replace it with that in the haystack. Right? This also produces a new string. Any instance of needle is replaced in the haystack is replaced with the replacement needle. Right? Do we want to see any of these in action, by the way? Otherwise, I'll let you play with them. I'm only giving you the surface of this. Right? There's a whole iceberg of string under the sea of string manipulation functions built into PHP. Generally, if you want to know how to do something in PHP, Google for it, and what will pop up? PHP, well, this one, php.net. That is the de facto documentation of the language. There is no, I believe, maybe there now is, but there's no ISO International Standards Organization that specifies what the language is, not like C or Java. But and again, maybe that's changed. Instead, this is the de facto reference of anything PHP. You can search around in it. Oh, wow, they released 8.1.1 in December 2001. Great. But you can search around for it or just Google for it and up pops php.net. I recommend that because if I say PHP how to split a CSV string, right? Then, well, that's Stack Overflow. PHP not, oh, get CSV, okay, fine. PHP explode. Let's look that up. Along with the official documentation that you can read, there's a whole bunch of unofficial documentation down below. Over the years, people have posted, and this is curated, so it's not just some rando on the internet giving you some bad advice. This is all curated advice from PHP developers on, well, here's a common solution for that's related to this that I found is nice. Oh, I guess that one's not. That's why it's got negative values. All right, 11 months ago, so be careful. While most non-alphanumeric data types as strings return an array with an empty string when used with a valid separator, true returns an array with a string 1. Right? So here's some gotchas. Here's some things to watch out. Here's some common solutions. Right? All right, so maybe it is rando internet people nowadays. I have no idea. The last thing I'll mention today are arrays. And I put that into quotes very loosely there because PHP actually does not have actual arrays in the sense of a traditional array. Instead, PHP has what are called associative arrays. If you're coming from a Python background, think dictionaries, but even then, they're kind of a neutered dictionary. An associative array, it's actually a neutered map, is what I want to say. Neutered map, right? Whereas a map, like in Java, a map can map any type to any type. An associative array or a dictionary can only map integers or strings to any type. Right? Fortunately, they don't have to be contiguous. They don't have to be in order. In fact, there is no order when you get into using strings as keys, but generally we refer to them as key value pairs, right? It's PHP associative arrays map either integers or strings to some other value, right? As keys to some other value, right? There we go. Integer values do not have to be contiguous. for start at 0, but that is the default. All right. So let's just get into it with an example here to understand what I'm talking about. If I want to create an array, well, the way that you can do this is, well, if you were in Python, you would do something like this for a set or for a dictionary, or you do like dict or something like that. If you are in PHP, you call the array. All right. Now, what you can do is you can start adding things to it. If I go array is equal to 4, I don't have to specify what the index is. If I don't specify what the index is, it simply appends to using the next available index. All right. So if I go for, let's go with 10, 20, 30, 10, 20, and 30. What does the array, how big is the array right now? How many things have I put into the array? 3. So how do I determine how big an array is? You could use size of, but if you're coming from a C background, that looks ugly and wrong, because size of is a macro that should only be used on data types. So I'll back up here and use count instead. Size of is just an alias to count, by the way. So array, how many things are in there? 3. Right. Let's concatenate here and line. By the way, I will always probably make mistakes like that because I forget, you can't do that. And that's what happens. But it'll still say 3, it just won't concatenate it with an inline character, but it'll be nice and formatted if I do it like that. Right? Well, what does it actually look like? Print underscore R, we saw that before. That is printing an array in a readable format. That's what the R stands for, a human readable format. And so if I print this out, I see that there's 3, and 0, 1, and 2. That's just because that's the default. I started at 0. What if I didn't start at 0? What if I said array sub, say, 4 is equal to 42? It'll give it the next available index from the last one used. So 4, 5, 6, 7. All right? That's all right. You can always go back later and assign that value. Right? Now, what's 1, 2, and 3? Doesn't exist. And in fact, is it even printing it in order? Nope. That should give you a hint as to what's actually happening under the hood here. It's nothing more than a hash table. Right? And if you know anything about hash tables, great. They're unordered, they're key value pairs, whatever. We'll get into that much later. Right? All right. What else? What if I did something like this? -1, 200. That's okay. What if I did something like this, right? Foo equals 12. That's also okay because you can use strings as keys. Not only that, but you can use strings as keys and you can mix value types. 3.14 foo bar. By the way, what comes next in foo counting? Foo bar, baz. Hello. So what we have here is a completely mixed associative array using both strings and integers as keys, and we've got every single type of variable as values here. It's a wild, wild west. Right? It doesn't have to be one specific value at all, value type at all. Right? Here's a gotcha though. Array sub 10 is equal to, will that end up being a string or a numerical, an integer array key? Number. It converts it to a number. I can prove it here. 10.5. Can doubles be, actually, this is rolling the dice too, I'm not sure. 10.5, that's a string. But if I use 10.5, right here, I'll go 11.5 so I don't have collision here. 11.5 as a number, what will happen there? truncation because you can't use doubles as keys. Right? Weird things happen when you do weird things. Who would have thought? Don't do weird things, and you don't have to worry about it. Right? Okay. What happens when I reassign a value? Say array sub 0 is equal to 27 now. And then I print it out. Well, I just overwrote that value right there. Right? How do I get a value out? I unset a value, array sub 0. There we go. And when I do that, come on. Aha. Anyway, it'll be deleted out of the array entirely. Okay? So it won't even be a key in the array anymore. Does this work? Nope. I will make sure before we lose that our work there that I put it over here. There we go. Any questions so far on this? Yeah.
Does PHP have collections?
It has a what?
Does it use collections?
This is the collection. This is the only collection. PHP, you can define classes, and so there might be some tacked on library where there's a class that represents a set, there's a class that represents a map, or there's something else like that. But as a primitive type, as a built-in type, an associative array is the only collection that's supported. All right. Well, I can edit that, but can I do anything over here? Nope. All right, fine. Refresh. You can also use other syntax here to immediately there we go, is equal to array. And what you can do is you can give it key value pairs right off the bat. If you want to go 0 maps to hello, fine, comma, foo maps to bar, comma, 10 maps to 3.14159. Right? So it can be helpful sometimes to have that kind of initialization syntax. Very, very similar to, say, Python, if you're familiar with that. It uses a colon instead, right? All right. So that begs the question of how do you iterate over things in an array? Well, for that you need an IDE first of all. Here, I'll do it down here. For that you need loops first. So what kind of loops do we have in PHP? For loops. I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus, printf, hello, in the line, right? While loops, right? While I is less than 10, printf, hello. Uh-oh. Oh. What happened? Did this while loop execute? Nope, why not? It retained the value up here because it's not a declared programming language, and so it's not like I declared it like Java or C and I scoped it down to just that loop. Once it's created and hoisted to the current scope, that's what we call it hoisting, right? Oh, there's this variable here. All right, here's its scope. I'll hoist it up to the top and it lives in this entire scope right here. Once it's been created, it exists for the rest of the script or within that context. And so what value does it have right here on line 27 now? 10. While loop doesn't execute. I can prove it by. No buys. If you want to do this, you need to reset it. Okay. Oh, well, semicolon. Infinite loop. If you're at the command line, how do you kill things? Control C. All right. Let's make progress towards that terminating condition. I++. 10 hellos, 10 goodbyes. All right. That begs the question of how do we iterate over that array that we just had? Okay, oh, good. Let's try a regular old for loop first. For I equals 0, I is less than, well, if it was all contiguous, index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to count of A. It was A, right? Array. I++. Then we'll go ahead and print out array sub I. Unfortunately, I don't think you can do that because it will only take care of this right here. There we go. Yeah. I'll do it like this. And then I'll just print. And then concatenate it with an end-line character. What's the problem with this? Oh, 42, 10, 20, 30. Put a bunch of stack traces, stack traces, stack traces. Why? There is no 0, right? Let's go back up to the pretty printed one. There is no 0, 1, 2, 3. There is a 4, 5, 6, 7. Is there an 8, 9, 10? There is 11, huh? Right? So does get, it doesn't even get in there. Why? Because I don't know how many things I put in there ultimately, but whatever. So that ain't gonna work, right? Especially since some of the keys they're strings. How are you gonna get those? That's where you bring in a for each loop. Now there are 3 or 4 different ways of doing this. I'm gonna show you the best way because we only have about 4 minutes left. So for each array as key mapping to a value, printf or print key maps to value. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. There. Oh, okay. Well, let's make it pretty. There. 4 maps to 42, 5 maps to 10, blah, blah, blah. Bar maps to 3.15, 10.5 maps to, etc. Now that's only the order because that may or may not even be the order that I put them in. Don't read anything into that ordering. It's some sort of hash table that lives under the hood and it determines the ordering. Okay? But otherwise, a for each, and we do use the keyword for each. It is not for space each, it is for each. This is splitting up the array as a key mapping to a value. You can also iterate over the key values. You can also iterate over the values themselves and do other things if you really want to. You can dump the key set to an array, sort the array, and then go in order. You can dump the values to an array and then sort that and go in another order. We'll cover all that next week, though. All right? Questions so far? Nothing online except for spam. Russian spam. All right, I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.